Good morning, everybody. Advocating for unpopular cases, that was the title ordered by the organizers, and I took it as a kind of invitation for self-reflection. My first reaction to the title was, oh, what a nice topic, what a nice opportunity to present my part of the legal world, the vision of the criminal lawyers, of the civil liberty lawyers, of the human rights lawyers, us being, let's say, in the core of the legal profession, advocating against the wind, leading uphill battles, protecting the beaten and marginalized of the world, and so on and so on. Of course, fighting hard and then finally convincing first the audience and then the court. So, of course, as you all know, this theme made it to Hollywood. And it's getting even more pathetic when you bring our beloved lawyers colleague Mahatma Gandhi and Nelson Mandela into the play, and their words, history will prove that we are on the right side. So a little bit less pathetic was Jacques Verge, the French Cambodian lawyer, who really earned through his decades of exercise the title of the Devil's Advocate. He was in a time where it was really uncomfortable defending freedom liberation fighters in Algeria, actually people who bombed cafes and bars where the French still population was drinking coffee and wine. And he, on the cause of that defense, he developed the theory of rupture. Completely ignoring the court and saying, history has to judge, and we are on the right side of history. And he did it one more time in the case of Klaus Barbie, the Nazi criminal, whom he defended in France, and he said, "I don't gonna let you go off France, saying that the Nazi crimes were the only crimes against humanity. We have to talk about colonialism. We have to talk about your crimes as well." A little bit less, historic, a little bit more narrow was the historic view of the lawyers in the 70s in Germany defending terrorism suspects. But they were threatened even by the profession, by the courts, by the government. And a recent example, Guantanamo lawyers. In January 2002, when the Center for Constitutional Rights and some death penalty lawyers started to defend Guantanamo detainees, they received tons of hate mails. You can read them, they're online. So I could go on with example, I could explore it, but then my second reaction was, this is just too simple, this is too boring, and especially it's like telling you this and standing here, this is not what I would like to do, especially when I take into account that most of the defense lawyers who had been active in Germany, they're now defending the Deutsche Bank. So they're rich, they're in the center of the society. One got Minister of Justice, the other was, two of them were now heading the bar associations. Also the Guantanamo lawyers, they were awarded, they're well respected within the legal community. So my second reflex was, let us turn around and let's talk about the dangers of advocating popular cases. And so that's what I feel is the case in human rights. As a human rights lawyer or activist today, at least in Madrid, Berlin, London, and New York. So in occasions like this, we embrace each other. We are the good ones, we are on the right side, and no question about impact, no question about how we are going to lead this battle. It's important that we have the label here, human rights, and then we don't allow many more questions. And the other side, the governments, the corporations, they understand this this exercise, and so they pay lip service to us. They receive us, so we're invited, we're interviewed, we're awarded. Amal Clooney, our new role model, sitting with Chancellor Angela Merkel there. That's where we want to come to. Not like achieving something, but really, feeling to be taken serious. And then my third reaction came up. How narrow is that view? How Eurocentric? How privileged am I? How privileged are we living on an island in Germany, in one of the richest countries, one of the richest regions in the world, having, all kind of comfort, very comfortable work and living environment, and even having time and the opportunity to reflect on this kind of things, while my colleagues and all of my colleagues in Mexico, Colombia, Argentina, and I could name many more other countries whom we are cooperating with in our work, are threatened, have to partly, go to from time to time go to exile, have been in prison, and I could go on. So obviously, you understand, this is the kind of, self-reflectionary process. I think it's necessary, which I could continue. But of course, it was just, I just wanted to give you a little insight and not exhaust my whole time with that. Rather than, I would rather like to connect these observations and draw some conclusions, 3 conclusions. One is the lessons about, the Hollywood, Mandela, Jacques Verge, Guantanamo is, it's about a lesson about persistence and about sustainability of our work. It's not always important to have a quick success. A colleague of mine, Jules Lobel, wrote a wonderful book, Success Without Victory. This is about long-time achievements of social movements, long-term transformation of society. And it means that the legal work has to be embedded in a broader social and political context, law as a social process. So it's the second observation is that means that this is not about our ego, but we tend to take it as, lots of us tend to see us in the center of everything. And of course, we have to play our role. We have to play our role in the courtroom, and if it's necessary, we have to struggle hard. On the other hand, if it's necessary, we have to sit down with those who are, in governments or in corporations, and not to argue with us about what is it compatible with our feelings. We have to take this role because it's not about us, it's about the cause, it's about the communities and their causes. And the third observation that's very clear, we have to overcome our Eurocentric, our privileged view of exercise, our profession. What does it mean? What does that mean? What I try to lay out? What does that mean for our work? How can that apply in the fields where let's say my part of the legal community is working on human rights and civil liberties? I want to point out 5 fields where I suggest that we all have to be more active. When I say we all, that is connected to one of the observations. Being embraced as, let's say, the agents of human rights, as the representatives of human rights, bears a very, very high danger. And that is, we are seen as defenders of particular interest. Okay, now we bring human rights into the play. And so you have the word, your word is considered, then we sit down and make our decision. No, human rights and what we're talking about is in the interest of everybody, of all of us, and this is what I wanted to point out, at least in 5 fields of our work. The first is, and I think here is also something, I'm not sure how much you're doing, the pro bono lawyers, the PillNet and all the others, at least I don't observe so much, solidarity with persecuted lawyers. I think this should be on the top of our agenda, because I know you had a panel yesterday about shrinking spaces, and one part of the shrinking spaces of civil society is more and more authoritarian regimes. Partly they call themselves democratic, partly not. They take key players out of the play, and that is the lawyers. So many lawyers are now in prison. My friends who are organizing the Days of the Endangered Lawyer, end of January, they had a heavy dispute. Do we fight for the Chinese lawyers? Do we fight for the Uzbekistan lawyers? Do we fight for the Egyptian lawyer or the Turkish lawyer? Because all of them are in a devastating situation. So I think here we can all do much more. Of course, a field where you are already very active, what I observe is discrimination as one very important civil liberty. A field which I propose where we can all be more active, of course, is surveillance. Because it's not only the oppressed and marginalized and those who stand up for social justice who are in danger, but we are all in danger of being more and more surveyed. The third field, unfortunately I missed the panel yesterday on migration because I was sitting on the other panel, but I think this is one of the most important struggles of today. To enforce the rights to rights, like Hannah Arendt framed it. We are depriving thousands and thousands of people now, and I'm talking about Europe, of the right to rights. Look at the situation at the Moroccan-Spanish frontier, at the Greek-Turkish frontier, at the Bulgarian-Turkish frontier. There is no more right to rights. These people are regarded as objects. So we have not only to enforce this right to rights, but we have to install law as the governing principle of the European society. This is a struggle about us, about the future constitution of our societies. And so if we are not ready to help them, I think we're lost. The fourth, and that sounds very familiar to you, of course, enforcing political and civil rights. And that is, in fact, something where pro bono lawyers were part of a success story, and that is about Guantanamo. And I'm wondering how there is not much written about it. There's not much communicated about it. But you know, starting in the last darkest corner with Guantanamo and ending up with 500 lawyers representing nearly all detainees, a mixture of radical lawyers, pro bono lawyers, established lawyers, and achieving these incredible decisions at the Supreme Court. They didn't achieve to close down Guantanamo, but they achieved that the principle of law is regarded, that Guantanamo is no more a model which can be exported to other countries. And so I think this is a kind of success story we have to write. And then, of course, the hardcore issue is economic, social, and cultural rights, because then we're going to the roots of shrinking spaces, of migration, and of the violations of political and civil rights. And so, at the beginning of the story of my organization, we were very much dedicated to political and civil rights. So I went to Peru to one of these Latin American, European anti-summits and presented the vision of my organization. So we were ready to fight the cases of assassinated and threatened trade unionists, for example, or land leaders. And so the people sitting there from Peru, from Bolivia, Colombia, they were saying, oh, very nice, and if we have an assassinated leader, we will consider to come to you and bring the case. But what about the copper mine in our region? This is the cause of everything. So that they are destroying the land, they are destroying the seas. What you're doing about that? And I was like, oh, it's very difficult to do something about that. But that was for us a starting point to think, and of course we are in the middle of it, to invent tools to litigate economic, social, and cultural rights. This is on the forefront, and I leave you without naming this gentleman, because it's not only about this gentleman. It's a tendency. It's Brexit. It's Erdogan. It's Putin. It's a new authoritarian leadership model. And I read a lot, we all read a lot. The only really sensible thing I observed was Dennis Noer, the director of the World Economy Institute in Kiel in Germany, said one very impressive thing. He said the biggest implication of this last election was for him that Western governments, and I leave you alone for this, Western governments have to struggle against social injustice, because this is the cause of this new tendency. We have to struggle against social injustice, knowing how difficult it is, but this is the challenge we have to take. Thank you very much.